So we're gonna get started recording this episode. For those of you tuning in, we have a few cameras. So if you ever see me moving or getting up, it's because I'm just moving the cameras and stuff around. We're gonna be interviewing Lenoria Addison. She's the CEO of Cazza.
Yes.
And so in this episode, we're gonna talk about why she decided to start Cazza and get into the hair industry, the hair space, beauty industry, and also her story and background of how she got to where she is today. So again, I'm super excited to have you on the episode.
I'm thrilled. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well.
This episode is live, meaning that we're sitting literally right near each other.
Yes.
Recording this. And so before we get started, can you let people know who's Lenoria Addison?
Well, hello, everyone. I mean, that's a difficult question. I think, who am I? I'm always becoming. So that's who I am. But I guess professionally, as Abu said, I'm the founder and CEO of Cazza, which is a pre-launched hair care brand. And I can get into more details about what we are and how we're different a little later. But I also professionally have a background in digital media and influencer marketing. So professionally, I've been, the director of influencer marketing at ad agencies where I've led campaigns for brands like Taco Bell, Samsung, Sonic, eBay Fashion. I recently actually just consulted on a campaign for FX Networks for the show Dave, helping them launch a social digital campaign. So professionally, my background and expertise is in social and in digital media. So yeah, that's sort of who I am professionally.
Professionally, okay,
Yes.
Okay. And where are you based out of now?
So I am in Los Angeles, located in Venice Beach, and I've been in LA for 8 years.
Okay. So I'm guessing you came to LA maybe after college. What brought you to LA?
So I moved to LA in 2013 by accident, actually. I was recently a graduate from college, and at the time, 8 years ago, I was going through a breakup. And I moved here just to sort of get away from that situation and to visit a friend. While I was here, I was applying for jobs, just a recent college graduate, not really in college. I was pre-med, thought I would go on to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't have the emotional capacity for it. So just sort of was, looking for a new path for myself, and decided to just visit a friend here in LA, in which I was applying for jobs, and I got hired a week of me being in LA, and I literally never left. Wow. I had a backpack and 2 suitcases, and I stayed in LA.
Wow. Wait, so first of all, pre-med?
Yes.
I had no idea that you wanted to pursue, because I'm guessing that you trying to pursue being a doctor, correct?
Yes.
So what led to that? Growing up, did you is your family doctors? What led to you deciding, okay, I want to be a doctor?
Right. So growing up, so I was actually I was raised by my great aunt and uncle. So I was in a program, so foster care adjacent is what I like to say. I was in a kinship, which is what it's called. So being raised by relatives. And they were older, and they experienced a lot of health issues. They were sick a lot. My great aunt, who I called mother, suffered from diabetes. And then my uncle had his own health issues. And so I think growing up, just seeing having parents who were raising me who were sick, interested me in wanting to do something about it. I was like, how can I actually help people? Because my loved ones are experiencing a lot of illness, and I just want to be able to help them prevent that. So much of this is preventative. So how can I do that? And so I got really interested in medicine, I think, just because it was just a part of what I was experiencing growing up. It was a challenge that I had. And so I wanted to help my community, help my family, help people. And so, yeah, in college, I was pre-med.
Wow. And so you decided to go this route because you felt okay, I need to help people.
Yes.
What, being so young, how do you even come to that conclusion? How do you come to the conclusion of, I need to, help to save people?
Yeah.
did you see what impacted that thought process?
Yeah, I think really mostly just, I mean, my mother, like she would have like a lot of like diabetic like issues. So
Okay.
like I remember when I was young, she went into like a diabetic coma at one point, or like, you know, she had a lot of insulin issues. So I was already naturally just like a caregiver from a young age. I mean, I was like caring for family members.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just innate also a part in my personality. So I was like, "Ugh, if only I had all the skills, if only I could like actually do something meaningfully. I know I'm 10 or however old I am at the time trying to help you, but I'm not an expert in this." So
Mm.
I remember like I would form relationships with like the doctors, and like I would go to appointments with my mother. I would actually be like her advocate a lot. So I, you know, make sure that she was taking all the medicine that she needed and she was doing all the things that she wanted. So I think it was just put on me at a young age. And so I thought like, how about I actually like be educated in this to like really be able to impact people, and specifically within my family.
To be so young and have that thought process, you know, like
Yeah.
now looking back and knowing you, I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like to be so young and have that thought process is incredible.
Yeah.
Were you and your mother close?
Yes, we were really, really close. We were definitely like really close. She was definitely like my best friend, and um again, just like really connected in that way, and me really just seeing her, you know, be sick. And also when I was younger, I experienced like I saw a lot of deaths around me too. So like, you know, when I was 10, I lost my grandmother. She passed away from like cancer, and just like I just saw a lot of deaths like before, you know, my mother actually who raised me passed away when I was 16.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so it was just sort of like a lot of these medical issues and things that I was seeing, and I was like, I have to do something about this. I'm gonna go to medical school. Obviously, I didn't do that. I didn't end up going to medical school, but I do think a key mission or purpose of mine in this life is to figure out how can I leverage at least my story or just me or things that I'm doing to impact others. Like it's still a value proposition of mine that I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think too along the way you realize there's many ways in which you could help.
Yes.
You know, like you said, you could highlight your story and amplify that. You know, you
Yes.
could help someone else along the way. And so I think
Right.
that's really important. Now, as you were growing up and you were navigating this in the hospitals, forming relationships with doctors, you know, did you ever feel like who was there for you? Did you ever feel alone along this journey?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel like that's just a natural, that's sort of a battle that another like life thing that I have to figure out how to navigate or just sort of figure out how to overcome, because I do think that it can be a really lonely journey. Like I've always been so different, you know. I grew up in foster care adjacent, you know, like I was a part of a family that wasn't actually really, you know, they weren't I mean, they were my family because they took me in, but they weren't necessarily like my uh, siblings. And so I'm already like, you already naturally feel othered in those kind of environments. And I think when I lost my mom at 16, just really having to stand on my own. And I remember that experience, I sort of I gave myself two options. It was like, you're either going to do really well in life, or you're going to let this like succumb you and you're going to end up, you know, in a situation that you don't want. Like I'm either going to end up on the streets really. And like, as I know, and I'm not sure if you all know, but a lot of, you know, people who were in foster care or who experience that end up homeless. Like it's like a pipeline to prison. It's a pipeline to prison, and it's also a pipeline to homelessness because you don't actually have a lot of resources. And so from a really young age, I always had to figure out how to crowdsource my emotional well-being and also just like my life for survival. So I had to figure out like, okay, like where am I trying to go? And then how can I sort of one, get myself there, but also align with people who I, you know, believe I can help them and they can also help me.
Yeah, that must have been hard.
Yeah.
It sounds like, you know, you were here trying to navigate a lot.
Yes.
And mentally, I'm sure that's challenging. It presents its own challenge.
Right.
And so you decide to, okay, here's another path I could take to, you know, move to LA now.
Yeah.
Was there conversations with anyone, or was this just like...
Right. So when I, like my senior year of college, I took an entrepreneurship class actually. And so I remember being like really inspired by my professor at the time, because I didn't even realize like entrepreneurship was like a thing really at all. I just was like, what? And then, I was looking at magazines like Inc. magazine or, Forbes magazine or things like that. And I started to realize, wow, like these people actually like are having like you can actually create a company that can have an impact on the world. You can do that at a young age. You don't have to be, you can do it at any point in your life, really. You just have to, you can just need to see an idea or see something that you believe in, and it can actually impact others. And so when I moved to LA, I was just, had that newfound passion where it was like, wow, I could like create a business of some sort. Like, what kind of problems do I have? So I just started like, assessing my own life. I took, jobs, like different jobs here and there. Like one of my first jobs, I was a technical recruiter. So I was recruiting software engineers for companies like Snapchat and Tinder. And this is like in 2013. This is before these companies even really like became the companies that they are. Like at that time, Uber was like new. Like people were just starting to take Ubers. And so I was like interfacing with like the CEOs of those companies sometimes. So like, I remember like the CEO of one of the CEOs of Snapchat, like co-founders of Snapchat, like we were actively like talking to because we were trying to help him hire engineering staff for his business. And I was like, wow, this is so inspiring. This person is like, just like, what makes them different than me? Like how are they're doing it? I think maybe I should be able to do it too.
Okay. And so from one, that's a very unique experience. You're going and you're helping these companies that are growing massively.
Yeah.
We know them now, but back then no one knew who they were.
No.
So when you were there, like at the early beginnings, early ground, like what do you think you learned from them that really helped you where you are today?
I think really just sort of like the ability to take a risk. Right. And like take a risk when other people might not agree with that risk, or other people might not see the vision for that risk. And sometimes we're placed with like gifts, or we're given ideas, or we're given things that people just might not ever actually understand. But you still have to do it anyway, because that's your unique, it's for you. It isn't for everyone else to understand. And so I just started to realize like, okay, yes, these people they took a risk, but also I'm not a fool. I know that these people were at Stanford University. They have access to certain things that not everybody has access to. So for me too, just figuring out, what access do I have? And how can I sort of use that to propel my business or, anything that I'm trying to do forward.
So you come out to LA.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said one other person here.
Yes, I know one other person here at the time, which is like a college best friend, and she actually ended up leaving LA like 3 months into me being here, really. So I felt very alone. I felt like, wow, I'm in this new place. I don't really know anyone. I just, I'm going through this like breakup situation, and what am I to do? Like I was really, really afraid. And I remember calling like home a lot, and I had friends who were just a lot of friends and family who would tell me like, I think you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Like they would tell me that, like, I actually think you're supposed to be there. I think it's actually better for you to be there. So I just had to keep the course.
No, that's really good. Like, so you said, I felt alone.
Yeah.
But that feeling was familiar because, you went through tougher challenges.
Yeah.
So when you decided because most people would go home.
Yes.
They don't know anyone, they would go home. So what did you do? Did you decide to throw yourself at work, or did you decide to like foster that community where you wouldn't feel alone anymore?
Right. I think it was honestly like both. It was definitely like I had to I was for sure like throw myself into something. And I do think it was work, because I was always like trying to figure out like if I am having feelings of sadness, or if I am feeling alone or anything like that, how do I transmute that energy? Like how do I, and I felt like the best thing to do was like create something with it, like use that to like propel something. And so I would try to throw myself into that. But then also I started to cultivate a community. I started to, start making friends with people who I was working with, and just putting myself out there. And I just started to realize like, oh, wow, I have a community here. and I'm not alone. And like, even though maybe I am, sometimes we just I keep telling myself this same story, right? Like, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone. And sometimes it isn't true. Sometimes it's just a familiar feeling, and we can do things that are self-fulfilling that create that, more of that. But I had to sort of like change my mindset.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's really important, because even entrepreneurs and business owners, people navigating through life, they do have this feeling of, okay, am I supposed to be doing this?
Yes.
I feel really alone, and maybe that's a sign that I need to opt out.
Yes.
Right. As soon as we have this feeling, because we're used to, and I always tell people, in the age of social media, we know more about other people than we do about ourselves.
Right.
And then when we're in a place where it's just us and we feel alone, we think that's, signs of, it's not a familiar feeling.
Right.
So it's still fascinating to me how you were able to navigate through this again, once again. It was almost like a familiar place for you to be.
Oh, absolutely. And I think just my life has given me tools to be able to do that, where others might fold. I think I just, from a really young age, had to survive. Like, one thing I know how to do is to survive. So I will survive.
Yeah.
Even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is challenging, even if I don't know all the answers, I know that I just, what are my other options? Like, you have one or two. In my mind, that's the thought process. Like, I have one or two things. I'm either going to let this consume me and take over me, or I'm going to rise above it. And every day I'm trying to rise above it, even in the face of adversity.
So after your first job, you're getting this experience, ground level, helping, some of the big companies we come to know, Uber, Snapchat, etc. What happens after that? Where does do you say, you know what, now I'm going to go back to medical school because I don't really like any of this? So what happens after?
Right. So so after that, I didn't like the recruiting, but again, it's like one of my first jobs out of college. You try things. I didn't like it. However, I did connect with a few engineers. Like, I became friends with like some of the engineers that I was working with, and I actually was like, oh, I have an idea. Maybe we should work on an app, and maybe we should, create something. And so from there, I decided to work on one of my like first ideas, which was a fashion app called Hooked Fashion, and it was basically like creating like a social shopping experience. So it was like I wanted it to be a place where people go to share and discover new places to shop, right? So, and using a mobile app for that experience. And so I met an engineer there, and so we started building this platform, bootstrapping it. I had no idea about anything. I literally had to learn how to do UI, like UI and UX. I had to be designing the interface. I had to figure out flows. I had to do figure out so much of it. But I think I also learned a lot from that experience. And honestly, that's sort of how that propelled me into the digital media world that I'm in, because when I was doing that app, I needed to find talent to work with. I spent a lot of time on YouTube looking for social media creators who I thought could create content on the platform, or who could promote the platform on their like channels.
So how did the app work? Was it you could shop with peers at the same time?
So it was basically like you would log onto the app. I really was just a discovery tool mostly, right? You could log onto the app and you could figure out what are some unique places to shop outside of what the things that we already know, right? Because it's like everyone knows Zara or whatever the stores are, but what are some new, unique places that we might not know about, and we can help each other like discover these places.
Right. Okay. And then how did that app go?
Yeah. So we got to, I think, about like 2,000 to 3,000 downloads, which was pretty decent. I mean, apps are hard. Like, it takes scale. You need massive amounts of people on the platform. Really, and it can get really expensive. Like, you are, there are a lot of databases that you are a lot of things that you're purchasing within this like whole application experience. But it was there's another app called like there's so many social shopping apps right now, like there's a lot of them.
Right.
Honestly, I'm like, it was still a good idea. It's
like
just
it to know it or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
I'm like, it's
okay.
still a good idea. It's just, I don't know if it was like the right time.
Okay.
It may not just have been the right time, right? I think it was pretty early. And it just didn't work, it just fizzled out, maybe it I guess sort of failed. And I don't personally view it as a failure just because it leads me,
down the path
to the next thing. It just was a learning opportunity.
Now, did you guys raise funding for that, or where did the money? We just were
bootstrapping it. I was my co-founder at the time was working full time and working on it, and I also at the time was working full time just at odd jobs, like just working full time doing different things and bootstrapping the whole experience. Like I would host like little events. I was just trying to do like everything, and I was young too at the time. I was like 24, at the time doing that.
I think though that's like the, when people think people with ideas are coming from backgrounds with like money sometimes, but it's like, no, you were working a lot of jobs, trying to pay the bills and trying to make sure that you had capital to then invest in this idea of yours, and you didn't know where it was going to lead you. You don't come from, this family that gave you millions of dollars to just test out your ideas. And so I think it's really important. So what would you say was your biggest takeaway from that first idea? Because it's the first time you decided to step out as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So what was the biggest takeaway for you?
I think also just not like not forcing things, meaning like I was exerting a lot of mental capacity like towards it. When things weren't working, I was really a bit stressed about also just sort of like the financial piece of it all and trying to figure out like, how can I scale this? What is my runway? These are words that I know now. Then I didn't know these words. You talk to me about a runway, I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But now, I do know. And so I think just like you will align with it might not be the first idea. The first idea might not work. The second idea might not work. The point is just to be inspired by things and to think about what is the actual purpose of this, like outside of just yourself. Because to me, it's like, if you can just, if I can just impact one person, that's winning.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think sometimes people overthink it.
Yeah.
And they think you need to be the expert or 30 years of experience or a lot of capital. But the thing is, like, you learn, right? It's really not failing. And you learn along the way and say, okay, if I had to do it over again, this is how I would do it.
Exactly. You learn how to pivot. You learn what the word pivot means. You learn, because I think, sometimes also too, people will just keep trying to push something that's just not working. And you'll spend years exhausting that thing. Or sometimes you can spend years trying to do something and then you can be Michelangelo and it works and it's just, you're whatever. But you just have to realize, like, what's your threshold and when is it time for you to pivot? And for me at that point, it was enough. It was time for me to sort of like pivot and continue to evolve as like an entrepreneur and think about just sort of what it means for me to be a leader and how do I, what kind of life am I trying to cultivate? Even still today, like all the time, like just sort of like, who am I? But then you follow that up with, who are you? Like, why not you? So imposter syndrome, I don't think ever goes away. I just think you just learn how to navigate it and you start to believe in your worthiness, because ultimately when you're sort of feeling these feelings of imposter syndrome, you're sort of telling yourself that you don't deserve it or that you might be unworthy of this thing, but really just trying to challenge that thinking. It's really just a mindset.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of times people don't understand that it does start with the mindset. They're like, okay, but what did you do? And you're like, no, you had to first change how you think about yourself and your ideas and failing, and to really understand, like, this is how you stay in the ring for 12 rounds.
Totally.
You have to be able to, like, you can't go in with the idea that, okay, I just need capital and that's the only thing I need to succeed. No, you also need these other things as well that you need to learn. And a lot of times you learn by like not succeeding the first time around. And so from that company,
Yeah.
what did you do next? Did you say, you know what, because were you still working
Yes,
full time?
I was still like juggling like little odd jobs, and then I was like, okay, I think I want to move beyond the app, and I was like, I need like a job. I need a real job. I need a full-time job. So I went back into corporate America. So I started working at a company called Awesomeness TV, which I found on YouTube also, by the way, when I was like looking for talent, like influencers for my fashion app. And so they had an opening for a position where you would essentially like you would work with social media creators to one, like work on like just different brand deal activations, and also help them produce content for social. So whether that be for like, at the time it was like their YouTube channels or their Instagram profiles. And we did, you know, a lot of partnerships with like, we would create like scripted shows too for like Amazon and Hulu. And so I found this company and I was like, oh, that's like seems really fitting, because I was kind of actually, so using a lot of my experience from me being an entrepreneur, my first company. So I'm seeing other people raising money and other people doing this.
And you don't really necessarily know how.
Yeah,
So
I don't know how.
You find this accelerator or this incubator that's helping you, and you think, so you're having these, okay, in 3 months I'll raise X.
Because that's what I read, right? It's like, that's what I read online somewhere, that like, traditionally it should take, you know, a person like 3 months, but I also have to realize that's a person who has access.
Right.
Keyword access, and maybe a person who isn't brown.
Right.
Like, you know?
Yeah.
So, or who isn't female.
Correct.
So, you know, I start to realize like, oh, wow, actually this might be longer, or it just might take more sort of time than I was expecting, but I'm also very limited on my runway, my money, essentially. I'm really limited on my money. So
right. How long of a runway did you have when you looked at, okay, I'm trying to raise 3 months, I'm leaving my job?
Yeah, I'm leaving my job.
Was it like 6 months, 12 months?
No, it was like 6 months. But in my mind, I was like, that's great. That's a lot. Anything can happen in like 6 months.
Yeah.
No, like not, you know, what I thought. And so then I actually ended up getting a message on Facebook from someone who I used to work with at my last agency, who had moved over to another agency, and was like, hey, we're looking for a head of influencer marketing for this agency. I think you would be amazing for it. You should come in and talk to the team. And so I was like, well, this is great. I'm running out of money, and let me just go consider my options. You know, I think I've always just been open to considering my options and realizing that it's not just one thing.
Right.
And so then I had a conversation with the company, and we meshed well. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to take on this opportunity. And I did. And, you know, I think that this second idea, I was really sort of, you know, bummed by it, because I really wanted to see it through. And it, you know, and it was sort of like my second pursuit at trying to be an entrepreneur. And it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. You know, on paper, it wasn't successful. And so I think I kind of just really struggled with that, where it was like, am I actually supposed to be doing this? Like, am I supposed to be like, maybe I'm not supposed to be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm supposed to be an employee and just on the straight and narrow path. Maybe that's the position I'm supposed to be in, and maybe I'll try to do that. And I tried, but then I always realized I'm different.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just different. And so
what does that mean when you say that?
That means that like I'm different, meaning like I have a lot of ideas. I can't take that for granted. You know, I have to do something with that. I'm different. I think differently I see the world maybe in a more unique lens. I'm always like looking for, I see just inefficient things that could be just different. I want to usher in, I want to create space for people like me who are different, you know, who maybe didn't have like, who come from adversity, or who come from these sort of backgrounds where they were told, you know, that they weren't going to be successful, or they could have potentially been a statistic. I'm the complete opposite of any of that. So it's like, I'm given this for a reason. And so I need to do something with it that might be bigger than the environment that I'm in currently, which is like at the time, might be like at an agency or at a company.
So you end up transitioning back to working in corporate.
So, yep. I end up transitioning back to working in corporate, and it's okay. And like, I build a really great relationship with my boss who I am really good friends with today. And I'm running, influencer marketing for Taco Bell at the time. And I'm just doing that. And then I'm like wearing my hair natural and it's curly, and I am using like hair gels, right? And I'm like, okay. I like love red lipstick. I love makeup and things. And so I was like, oh, my lipstick makes me feel a certain way. Like it like physically makes me look different, but emotionally it makes me feel a certain way. Like it makes me feel like, oh, I can show up and be the person that I want to be. But when I was my hair products, I'm like, why are hair products so just like boring? Like, and half of the time they don't work, and they definitely don't they don't leave me feeling emotionally, sort of transformed. And I like had this like tagline that I was saying all the time, like makeup for your hair, like makeup for your hair. Like I'm like, a styling gel is literally like a makeup product. It really is a tool that you can create all kinds of things with. You can, from people doing baby hairs to people doing ponytails to people doing, all kinds of things. And so I really just started having that conversation with my boss actually at the time, like, oh my gosh, like this thing, I've been thinking about this thing, makeup for your hair. And it was honestly the first time I had a boss that really was like, wanted to cultivate sort of a person with ideas.
Yeah.
And she didn't try to take that away from me in addition to me doing my job. And so I really just started like thinking about that. And honestly, when I was a kid, I braided hair. I know I didn't mention this like before, but it's like I grew up braiding hair. I was a hair braider. I started braiding hair when I was 10 years old. It was like one of my first jobs.
Okay.
And so I had all of these clients, and so it's like my life has always like I've always had like multiple jobs. Like when I was a kid, I was like a hair braider. I babysat. I did I was already kind of like an entrepreneur doing all these things. At the time, I didn't realize it. When I was a hair braider, I didn't realize it. And I also didn't see it as anything that was like lucrative or something that could be life-changing. And so I just never really pursued it like past high school. But when I, started to just wear my hair more natural, wear more curly, also started to realize my hair is fine. Like I have thin hair. That's okay actually. But why are companies like making me feel bad like about that? Or just products aren't going to necessarily change my inherent DNA. They can't change my hair texture. So I'm buying into this notion of this product telling me that it can help me change something, but really it can't. And so now I'm disappointed. And now I'm like, disappointed in myself. And so I started to play in this concept of like, what if we just encourage more like playfulness in hair care? Like you just use the product and you can create with it, as opposed to just like the functional benefits of it. Like, what about the emotional benefits of this product? Like, how can it make you feel better about it yourself? How can it help you to accept, just practice more self-acceptance as opposed to trying to like change things about you? And so then that's where we are today. Yeah. That's, how the pandemic hit when I was working at the ad agency, and still, I was working there and working on Cazza. And then the pandemic hit.
And that's the name of the company, Cazza.
Yeah, Cazza, my current company. And then the pandemic hit and my agency had layoffs, and I was, so they laid off like, maybe 10% of the staff because of COVID. And I was one of the teams that was like laid off for the pandemic. And so then I just like went full-fledged into Cazza, like, cause I had already been working on it when I was at the company. And so just been doing that for the past, it's pre-launch. We're not on the market yet, but I've been in R&D with my manufacturer, really just like trying to get the hair gel, because that's the first product, the styling gel, just trying to get that in a great place and really spending time thoughtfully building out the brand narrative and just like our positioning in the market and our messaging, really being intentional about that. Cultivating advisors for my company. This is the first time I've like had advisors.
Right.
For a company.
So what is Cazza and who is it for?
Yes. So Cazza is a pre-launch beauty brand. We're creating a suite of hairstyling products. The first styling gel. Our whole mantra is, we see styling products like makeup products. They should be able to, it's something that should physically transform you, but also emotionally make you feel good about yourself. And a product that you can play with, something that you can play with and create with, and really just take the pressure and like performance out of just like hair care and create a movement that's more playful and freeing and emotional. And so who the products are for, I want to, our target market is like the Black diaspora. So, you'd be non-binary. It's not really a genderized thing. It's really just people who are looking to have like a certain mindset, who are looking to have fun and play with their hair. From a demographics perspective, obviously this is probably like, Gen Z, millennial people who are just sort of like wanting to redefine like beauty standards and really just usher in like a new like way of thinking about beauty.
So as you enter into the space, I was just reading an article around Rihanna.
Yeah.
I think worth 1.3 or $6
Yes.
billion dollars.
Yes.
Hasn't released music, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. And so I'm noticing a lot of people like Rihanna or
Mhm.
I think it was Kylie Jenner.
Yeah.
We talked about Goop, the founder of
Yes.
Goop. We talked about
Glossier. There's
Glossier.
Emily Weiss from Glossier.
Emily Weiss, right.
Yeah.
And I think there was also another business. I'm blanking on her name. What's her name? She's an actress.
Oh, Taraji P. Henson or
Not Taraji.
Tracy Ellis Ross Pattern?
Well, Tracy Ellis Ross Pattern, and then there, what's Reese Witherspoon?
Oh, yeah, Reese Witherspoon. She has a production company.
Production company, okay. And so a lot of people are starting, and a lot of celebrities as well, starting to, partner. Or Pharrell recently as well, he's coming out with a skincare line.
Yes.
What the beauty spaces, people would always say, is like super saturated.
Yes,
like what's your feelings on that for maybe someone listening in and they're like, why should I start something around skin or hair? Like there's already so much things in the market.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it's really just sort of finding it's like finding your unique proposition, and also just like there's beauty in the niche, like figuring out like what your niche is and realizing that like, a celebrity brand is a celebrity brand. That's really different than maybe your own, like a personal brand, I guess. And yeah, just really thinking about like, how does your brand messaging, like really auditing the space and figuring out like, how does your brand messaging set you apart and what's your unique advantage in the space? Like for me personally, it's like, I know for Cazza, we're prioritizing emotional over functional. Like we're, for me, it's less about the product. It's more about the brand that I'm building. It's more about, again, like ushering in that new mindset. That's really different than how people are thinking about beauty today, right? Like so many beauty brands, so many hair care brands right now, which is okay. They're they've identified the unique problem that they want to solve, which is around maybe like scalp health. Like maybe they're like, we want to solve dandruff. We want to do this. We want to do that. That really isn't the goal for Cazza. The goal is like to help people to accept who they are and to help people to be more playful and creative, celebrate hair as creativity and as expression, and just more about how, and, I always say, you make a person feel good about their hair, you make them feel good about their life. And so, and what that means is like when you can help people show up in the way as their best self from an emotional perspective, you can really help them show up in the best way in their life. And so that is like what I'm trying to drill in with building Cazza. And I think that's just been years of my life experience, right? And even also just years of my corporate experience, now all married into this one thing.
Right, right. No, and I think that's really good. That despite seeing, the saturated marketplace, you said, no, there's still a space for me, because
Yes,
there's still people that have this feeling of, do I look my best, right? Am
yeah,
I my best self?
exactly.
And this is what you're addressing and saying, you know what, this is why I'm creating it. This is the
Exactly.
need for it in the market. And I think that's, absolutely true. Like, I think whoever is listening in for that
Yeah.
industry, that space, you're like, should I start? Yeah, you
Yeah,
should
you
start.
should. You should. And I always say, like, the problem that we're solving is like, personally, it's like hair care is overwhelming and it's too functional. Like, it's literally just too focused on like a function or a problem. And again, like I keep saying, we want to just be more playful and we want to create this movement. A brand that I love a lot because I follow just their messaging is Outdoor Voices. I'm not sure if any of you listening have heard of Outdoor Voices.
I've heard they create athleisure wear.
Yeah, they're the
Okay.
athleisure brand
Okay.
created by Ty Haney, who I'm obsessed with. But her whole mantra was sort of like fitness should be recreational
Mm.
as opposed to just about being an